Look, she alleges that there's so much corporate greed, but in food, that's ridiculous. For more than 40 years, food prices rose around 2.5% a year. Double-digit food inflation began with the pandemic and the disruption of the supply chain. But, the massive negative economic effect was really exacerbated by Biden.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Hey, we're just about at the end of August. We got a phenomenal guest for you today. His name is Robert H. Bork Jr., economist, journalist. He's known for the Antitrust Education Project, and obviously not enough people out there have been educated about antitrust because we still got a bunch of insane policies going on. But Robert, it's great to have you on the show. We're talking about the proposed economic plan, if that's not too broad, by the candidate for president, Kamala Harris. Not here to really talk about the efficacy of her campaign or, what she has or doesn't have, what she lacks as a candidate or how she got there. We're just talking policy here, which is what I like to do best. After all, it is a family publication, a family show, so we don't really like to talk about the obscenity of politics as it's practiced in modern day America today. So, price gouging, all right? Like, I've always thought my supermarket was a price gouger, all right? But if they're gouging, they're really bad at it because they should be making like 15, 20% profit margins instead of 1.5%, 2%. Where are they going wrong here?
Where they're going wrong is they're in a competitive marketplace for groceries, for vegetables, for all the things that you take home and serve your family for dinner. And so they can't gouge, or as the vice president would say, gauge, which she blew her line. She blew her line in the thing. But
it's a big word. Come on.
I know. I wonder if somebody wrote it the wrong way because they couldn't spell on her staff.
Well,
but you said we weren't going to do this, so let's.
Yeah. All right. So back to price gauging. Yes, the price gouging.
Look, she alleges that there's so much corporate greed, but in food, that's ridiculous. For more than 40 years, food prices rose around 2.5% a year. Double-digit food inflation began with the pandemic and the disruption of the supply chain. But, the massive negative economic effect was really exacerbated by Biden's, we're doing politics, we're doing policy, of his Inflation Reduction Act, pumping $3 trillion into the pockets of consumers, leading to too much money and chasing too few goods. And I think this is correct. I read this before, read it again. Every 100 days, we add $1 trillion to the national debt.
Correct.
It's outrageous. And that's where these prices, those factors, that's where the prices that she abhors come from. And the answer, of course, is to get the government out of the economy as much as possible, to let the marketplace actually begin to find its own level. And but they don't understand, and they don't believe in the marketplace. They think it's all fixed by corporations, private power. And they're, they don't understand that you can't outlaw supply and demand. And only a fool or a liar believes that you can. And I'll let your audience decide which they are, or both.
Okay. But now, as a business person and remembering the last round of inflation that we had, Bob, back in the 70s and 80s, normally, under normal economic conditions, consumers are resistant to price increases. But when you're in an inflationary cycle, I believe that consumers they expect prices to go up. And, your average business wants to keep their margin constant or they want to increase it. So I'll give you some examples here and give me your thoughts on it because I'm curious. Back in 2020, McDonald's profit margin was 25%. Then in 21, 22, it went to 30. And then now 23, 24, it's at between 28 to 29%. And the same thing has happened for each. Chipotle went from 12 to 15. Burger King, they were less greedy. They went from 20 to 21%. Subway went from 8 to 10, 11. Taco Bell, less greedy. They went from 15 to 16 to 17%. So there are companies that do take advantage of it, but isn't it really short term? They can't get away with this in the long run because competition is going to rear its head again and knock those margins down.
Yeah. I had this question the other day from somebody saying, well, there are monopolies and once you're a monopoly, you can raise prices. These companies aren't monopolies, but unless it's the bad food marketplace, but
yeah, exactly.
Then once you're in control, you could raise prices. And I said, and how long is that going to last before somebody comes in and says, I can beat that price? I can offer my hamburger for much less. And that's what's going to happen. But the government, particularly this government, doesn't believe in letting the marketplace work. They think everything that happens is an expression of greed and private power, and they don't see a world in which a marketplace could be the solution. And like my father said in the antitrust paradox, the consumer is really the key to all of this. The consumer welfare standard, which he put forward and which the Supreme Court adopted, and which has been the antitrust operating system for the last 45 years, it's a principle that puts the consumer at the center. And if we would just actually put consumers at the center of some of these other things that we're talking about here, and let the market, let them decide, let the market work, gouging may happen briefly, but it's not sustainable.
Right. And to follow up on the McDonald's thing is they've seen their first sales decline since 2020. They're rethinking their price increases and their margin expansion, and they're coming out with a new burger
and the McRib. I mean, they're panicking over there.
Yeah, and they're going to extend their $5 meal deal. So you see, yeah, you can do it in the short run. It makes sense, but then competitive market is going to rear its ugly head, for lack of a better term. And, they always fail to appreciate that there are substitutes. Like, hey, I can make a cheaper burger now at home than going to McDonald's. And, if I use paper plates, I can just throw out the dishes and not even worry about it, right?
Right. Yeah. Look, again, unpleasant things happen in the economy, things that we don't like. We'd like to be different. But I find, generally speaking, that the bad things are a result of government intervention, and the good things that happen are a result of the private sector and competition and innovation. Unfortunately, the government doesn't think that way. Even Republicans don't think that way.
Yeah,
for the most part. And certainly these days, there's so many Republicans in the Senate and the House now who fashion themselves as conservatives and think she's doing a great job at the FTC. I wonder what happened to the traditional conservative economics. Maybe that'll come back. I'm not sure. We have to wait till after Trump before that happens. But
well, it is fascinating that these people have absolutely no conception. Now, I remember, I'm old enough, when Reagan came in, the first thing he did was decontrol energy prices, oil prices. They were fixed at the barrelhead throughout the United States. And initially, this caused a price increase. And they said, oh, my God, we're going to have $2 gasoline, which we'd be loving to have now. And what happened? So he unleashed competitive forces in the market, and the price of gas dropped below $1. And, no one could believe it. Now, he never got any credit for this, other than maybe in certain economic circles. But that was a direct result of decontrolling prices. And you know what happened? We never had another energy crisis where people were waiting online to buy gasoline to fill up their cars because there was a so-called shortage. And, as an economist, Austrian with an Austrian bent, the best allocator of any good or service is the price, right?
Right.
It's the fairest too, isn't it?
It doesn't discriminate against class or race or anything, which is one of the reasons why I get so wound up when I see this focus on changing, coming back to my reason for being, protecting the consumer welfare standard. When they start wanting to introduce other issues other than efficiency and price and innovation and things like that, start talking about workers and equity and all that stuff, all that does is skew everything to higher prices.
Yeah. I had a professor at law school, and he said, fair is a sissy word.
Who was that?
Oh, God, it was way back when. I think it was my torts professor in law school. But yeah, hey, prices go up, prices go down. But if you look back, if we hadn't increased productivity so dramatically over the years, the dollar would buy zero at this point, wouldn't it?
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
So how do you educate the people who are responsible for making these often disastrous decisions? Is there a way to educate them, or do we just need to remove as much power from the ruling class as possible? I don't know how you do that either.
Well, the Supreme Court seems to have made a move in that direction. Actually, in some ways, restoring power to Congress and taking it away from the independent agencies. That will help. Educating them, if they want to be educated, would help, which is what we try to do. And we try to do it in a way that they understand that it's in their self-interest, and the self-interest of their constituents to stick with this consumer welfare standard, which is a neutral principle. It's not Republican. It's not big D Democrat. It's small d Democratic. And it's the consumers who make the decisions and not the government. And now I'm not saying that there aren't reasons why one would investigate and perhaps bring a case, but against a monopolist or against about a deal that could lead to monopoly. But generally speaking, I think business knows best about what it needs to do to create more efficiency and innovate than the government does. And the government's always like, a decade behind, trying to, with industrial policy, trying to use antitrust law, trying to use the power of government to create a situation that they think would be preferable than the one we have. None of those things ever work. I can't imagine, the worst monopoly that there ever was, perhaps, was AT&T, and that was a government-created monopoly. in the telephone system. When they got rid of that, my God, now we're talking over cell phones to each other with video. So,
hey, what about the CAB, the Civil Aeronautics Bureau, I think it was called, or board, and they had all the prices fixed in the 60s, 70s in air travel. And then somebody got, what was his name? Khan got the brilliant idea of just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
And then, look, we got concentration in the airline industry. There's definitely barriers to entry, a lot of them government imposed, but on an inflation adjusted basis, it's never been cheaper to travel. More people are traveling than ever. And that's just one example. We got rid of the Interstate Commerce Commission, another one. And we got to return to this. So you brought up indirectly, and I'll bring it up, the Chevron case that was just recently overthrown, which overturned by the Supreme Court, which said basically that, hey, courts don't know, government doesn't know, the agencies are the experts, so anything they do, unless it's flat out illegal, we have to defer to it. And now, and I haven't talked with anybody about this, so it's really opportune that you're here. What are the long-term effects? I mean, Congress, like you said, has to take back responsibility. You can't basically climate change. They haven't passed any laws about climate change, but the EPA was attempting to use existing rules and statutes as a justification to regulate carbon gases, shut down power plants, all this. How profound is the impact here, Bob?
I don't think we fully realize how profound the impact is going to be. If this, begins over the next couple of Congresses to result in members of Congress actually doing their jobs and making the decisions that we have asked them and put them in power to make, and not delegating it to unelected, so-called independent agencies, then I think it could be serious. We might actually see a situation that where members of Congress actually will have to have hearings and decide things in public, and right, and their reelection will depend on whether or not they can't hide behind an independent agency about climate change or any number of other things. They'll have
equity.
It'll belong to them, and that'll probably rein in some of the craziness.
Yeah, and the media, other than lamenting it, the overruling of the Chevron standard, there's been no coverage of it. You hear some people upset about it, whatever, but there's been no blowback yet. But when the courts have to start striking down all these rules and regulations, I mean, conceivably, 25%, a third of the regulations that have been passed aren't going to muster that test, are they?
No. And, and getting back to Vice President Harris and her price gouging policy, she wants to put the responsibility for investigating and adjudicating these things in the Federal Trade Commission. Lena Khan, an avowed Marxist, and it's just not going to work because the FTC doesn't have actual congressional authority, statutory authority to do this. So much of this is actual BS. Let's throw everything against the wall now for the election, and then say, "Whoops, I guess we really couldn't do that." But if she gets a majority, if she wins and she gets a majority in the Senate and the House, who knows? Maybe they will do that. Then the Supreme Court will, in 2 or 3 terms, have to knock it down.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yep.
I mean, look, the gun laws were basically all struck down in one Supreme Court decision 3 years ago. Maybe is it 4 years ago? And now we're still fighting over this. There's cases all over the place. Some have adhered to Justice Thomas's decision. Others have tried to do workarounds, all of this. And, obviously we're coming to the point where maybe they'll do what they did with voting rights and segregation. They'll start appointing special masters for all these states and say, you got to go with the special master and do what he says, or we're just going to strike everything down.
I worry greatly about this country if it's all going to fall on the Supreme Court, and how long can the Supreme Court hang on? They're trying to pack the court. They're trying to put in term limits, and I can't believe I grew up in a time when politics was a little less combative and nasty and ideological. But I guess that was the time when the Democrats controlled everything, and so therefore they didn't have to be.
And the media was a monopoly itself. By their own words, they should have broken that one up a long time ago.
Yes. Well, I was a journalist for a dozen years before I decided it was just too corrupt, and I left.
Good move. Hey, so antitrust policy. So the Justice Department says that JetBlue can't merge with Spirit. Spirit's hanging on. They're losing money. But then they say that Alaska Air can merge with Hawaiian Air, which is similarly situated to Spirit. I mean, there's no consistency here.
No, there isn't. And I really wonder what rule, that's the problem. If you don't have a standard, again, I come back to the consumer welfare standard, and it's just all political choices. It's all subjective choices. Then the airline industry, every industry, doesn't know what it really is allowed to do. Do we have to call up Lena Khan and say, we're thinking of buying a box of paper clips? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, we're buying a box of paper clips so we can count them to save money, right? This is madness. It's utter madness. And as you so eloquently stated prior, the government doesn't know what it's doing most of the time, which is why you can't keep giving them more things to do, because then you wind up like California, right?
Right.
All right. So education, that's one thing. Like the one party says, oh, education is so important. And then when you try to educate them about issues that really are important, they don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say to that. It's true.
Hey, education worked great. People are smoking a fraction of the amount of tobacco they used to smoke, right? And, hopefully cancer rates will go down, at least partly as a result of that, and the heart attacks and all that. So it worked there. It can work with the other stuff too, if we just let it.
Right. Well, and I've got to say, if we believe in freedom, then people should have the freedom to, kill themselves. I don't mean that literally, but I do think that we ought to educate people about the benefits of certain lifestyle things, but then we ought to let them do what they're going to do.
Yeah, the ball's in your court. We did all we could. Now,
I told you.
The rest is up to you, because we can't do anything else.
But we are the government, so we can, come in and slap ugly warnings on products, and we can try to remove products. We can try to raise the prices so that you won't use them, and
send taxes.
Yeah,
send taxes. Look, the country was built upon the tobacco industry. All right, you're either going to keep it legal or you're going to get rid of it. But they don't really want to get rid of it, and they don't really want people to stop smoking, because there's huge amounts of tax revenue that come in from all these sin taxes, right?
Right.
So
and let's look ahead to electric cars. I mean, the roads and so many other things are built on gas taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If they really, really get rid of gasoline or reduce it, substantially, what are we going to have charging taxes, and the damn things are too expensive already, and there are no charging stations.
Well, when you use a public charger, basically I have an EV and not because I think I'm going to save the world. Other reasons, and I do like it a lot, but has nothing to do with why they're being marketed to the public. But it goes EVs. When you go to public charging station, it can cost as much or more than gasoline from those stations
and take 5 hours, right?
Like 40 minutes. But when you actually think about it, if you have a home charger, like that's why I tell people, if you don't have a charger at home, don't even bother with it. It's just going to be time and money. Unless you're a very infrequent driver, go for it. But, to be giving me $7,500 because I bought an EV is the height of insanity, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. And there's no limit to that, right? There is no limit. If they sell one EV or they sell 10 million, everybody gets tax credit as long as it meets the criteria, right?
Right. And actually, who is paying for that? All of the rest of the people who don't have them and couldn't afford to buy them anyway.
Right. I mean, economically, it's not really a bad deal, especially the tax credit. But if you couldn't sell it without the subsidy, then you shouldn't sell it, right? Isn't it
right?
Basic? And when you subsidize stuff, you create shortages. And when you tax it, then you create surpluses, right?
Right. So as a Austrian economist, what do you think? You're perfectly happy to enjoy the subsidy and
hey, look, it's kind of like it's easy to justify because as a tax-paying individual, they're using my money for so many useless things. I can rationalize it. Okay, might not be true, but am I supposed to stick to my morality when it's to my advantage not to? I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and most people won't do it. Now, I was going to buy it anyway. I just took it. I guess I could decide not to file the paperwork and forego my tax credit. But what good is that going to do?
Okay.
Right?
Yes, I love a good rationalization when I hear one.
Hey, I admit it. But everybody pursues the whole theory of economics is in a free market, everybody pursues their own economic interest, without violating the rights of others, first and foremost, but you pursue your own economic interest, your own interest of your family, your community, and all that, right? So
that's what Milton Friedman says.
Yeah. And it works, right?
I'm not greedy. It's the other guy who's greedy, right? Yeah.
So I'm greedy, but I'm greedy for a good cause, me. But I guess when you carry my rationalization through to everybody else and all the other money they're getting and the corporate welfare and all the money that's been giving out, that's the whole crux of the problem, right? Get rid of their subsidies, not mine. But I'm willing to say, I'll forego my subsidy if you get rid of everybody else's too.
Right. None of us are willing to actually live by the principles we espouse. So when I turn 70 next year and I apply for my Social Security benefits, I'm going to take them.
Yeah. Well, you paid it. And there you have the best rationalization of all. You paid into it, and you're going to be lucky to break even on the deal, right? And you've been in a private account mimicking the market by only a third. You'd be getting 5 times more Social Security than you're getting now, right? It's a raw deal for us. It's a great deal for our parents because they got many times more than what they put in. But, hey, so where do we start here? All right. If we all go to the poker table and we're all putting our subsidies into the pot here, right? And we say we're going to start from the beginning, but it's so hard to do that because, you can't let Boeing go bankrupt, right? Boeing's vital to the national interest. We can't allow that. And the airlines too, because everybody wants to fly, right?
Well, there are only 100,000 planes parked out in Arizona or something, right? So they can just...
Yeah, well, and they're not getting any younger like the rest of us, right?
Right.
Hey, how do we connect with you on the web? How do we get your work?
Well, the antitrusteducationproject.org is our principal social media platform, and all of my blogs and op-eds show up there. You can also check us out on Twitter, X,
the site formerly known as Twitter.
That's right. At Antitrust EDU, because it's, the handles are too short. So,
okay. Excellent. Well, the link's in the show notes to this interview on Financial Survival Network. And while you're there, please sign up for your free newsletter. Mr. Bork, it's been an absolute pleasure, an honor to talk about these issues with you. Wish you the best, and we'll have you back on at some point.
I'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.